everybody. Good afternoon. Hello, hello. We'll try to make this exciting. I feel like I'm on a stage here. There should be a show or something going on. So can I see by a show of hands, how many of you have worked with foreign buyers that need E2 visas? That's wonderful. Wow, a lot of people. Okay. So can I see how many of you have never worked with anyone that needed an E2 visa or know very little about an E2 visa? Okay, there's a few of you in here. Good. Okay, so we're going to talk about E2 visas. That's it. I'm going to give you a typical situation. Let's see. Two buyers purchase a U.S. business. One is from an E-treaty country and one is not. They each must invest a minimum of 50% of the U.S. for the U.S. company, and one investor is from a treaty country and one is not. And their investment is $300,000. This is a typical E2, and this would work. So we're going to get into a lot of detail about what's in this paragraph, but just I want to mention it to you. This is a typical situation, and it's very important. There's a PowerPoint. Hopefully you'll have access to it online that you can review after I speak as well. But I want to give you my cell phone number, because if any of you have foreign buyers, or you yourselves as brokers, someone comes into your office and you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure, let me just call Attorney Weiss and see if she can answer my question on this. So my cell phone number is 602-380-2772. Again, 602-380-2772. And some of you in this room already have my number, so just keep it handy. I am a resource for you. And this afternoon, I am here for you. If you have questions, please ask them. You can ask them at the end, you can ask them to me afterwards, but I want to be able to answer your questions. It's very important that you have the knowledge, that you don't lose a deal because you don't understand the E2. So let's move forward. So what is an E2? So for those of you that don't know, an E2 allows a foreign investor a temporary way to live and work in the U.S. if they buy a qualifying U.S. business or create one. But they must be a national of a qualifying E-treaty country. So we're going to get into this a little bit more. There's one unusual criteria for the U.S. consulate in England, but most consulates have the same criteria. It just happens to be in England that they require you to reside in that country before you file for an E2. So I had a gentleman once, he's a sailor for like 6 or 7 years, sailing every year. And I said to him, where's your residence? And he goes, I don't have one because I live on the sea. So I said, that's going to be a problem. I said, you're going to have to get a residence. So he had to maintain residence in England, and then after, let's say, 6 months or so, then he was able to file an E. But how do you know where to file the E? So, as an example, let's say one spouse is from mainland China, and another spouse is from Taiwan. So, I wrote, you see here on the slide, the wife could get the E2 investor visa because she's from Taiwan, but the other gentleman who's from mainland China, we don't have an E-treaty with them. So I have here that I printed out because sometimes I get questions, what about this country, what about that country? There are so many countries, I don't have them all memorized, but you can even find it online. If you just type in e-visa list of countries, you'll get them. So if someone comes into your office, they're from a country and you're not sure that they could possibly get an e-visa, then you just type that in and say, well, let's take a look at it, and you'll see the countries. And you can help them with that, and that would actually make you look pretty. Here's actually a link that I put on the slide for you at the bottom, but you don't even need that link. You could just type in e-visa countries, list of countries, and that will help you get there. So, the E-treaty. We have a treaty that determines how many years you can get an e-visa. Some of the countries we allow 5-year visa, some of them we allow 1-year visa. What does that mean, visa? So visa, for many of you probably know, but when you enter the United States, you show your passport, and in there sometimes is a sticker, and that sticker is called a visa. And the visa has on the top right a little number of the alphabet. So it could have a B, it could have a D, there are many different letters in the alphabet, but they all mean something in the immigration world. So the E is on there, E2. It's a visa. Everybody needs a visa, an E2 visa, to come to the United States. So, sorry, can everyone hear me? Okay, so if you need an E2 visa, which you do, even Canadians do, Mexicans do. A lot of Canadians, you think, because they have TN, they have different categories, they don't need a visa. They do need a visa in E2. But how long will they get the visa for? So the visa is typically 5 years, but some countries, as I said, it's 1 year or 2 years. Why does that matter? Because when you enter the United States, you'll come in and they'll give you a 2-year status. Okay, 2-year status. This is where it gets a little confusing. So 2-year status, and then they can leave again, come back in again, get another 2-year status. So when they get too close to their visa expiring, they're going to need to renew it. So what happens if you have someone from a country that they only have a 1-year visa issue? Like here I mentioned Jordan, Ecuador, the Ukraine, Thailand, they only have like a 12-month visa. So they'll come in on the visa, they'll get 2-year status, and then if they want to travel, if they want to leave the country and re-enter, they're going to have to go get another visa. So if they don't want to leave the country, they could stay in America and file an extension of their E. So it's not a dead end for them, because many of them are like, why would I want to go back every year and renew my visa? They don't always have to do that. There's a way to extend it while they're in the United States. So basically a visa is a ticket to get in, but once you're in, it could expire. It's your status, and that's what matters. And so I often get brokers say to me, well, how do we know how long their status is? How long can they stay here? So there's something called the I-94 system, and you may want to jot it down, I-94. I-94 is a system when they enter, they don't get a stamp anymore in their passport like they used 2 years ago. So they get it's the same thing, it tells you how much time you can stay here, but it's online. So you type in online, I-94, and then they'll put in a little bit of information about their passport, like their name, their birthday, whatever, and you'll see their most recent entry, and also their travel history a lot of times. I've had clients that they go in the system and they're not there, and they're like, now what? We're not in the system. And I'm like, it doesn't mean you didn't make a legal entry, you're just not in it. Not everyone gets entered into it. I had a gentleman once that drove into the United States from Canada, and he asked for, usually you get 2-year status. He came in, they only gave him 1-year status. So I said, you know what, go to deferred inspection at either the local immigration office or the airport, and tell them, we believe you made a mistake on the I-94, and you really need 2 years. So he did, he got it corrected. But driving in sometimes is more complicated than flying in to the United States, so it's very important to check the I-94 system. And there is a way for them to do that, and as brokers, it really looks very sophisticated. If they come into your office and you say, oh, they say, how long can I stay here? And you say, well, I don't know, let's go check the I-94 system. So that looks good. And if they say, well, I think I'm from an E-treaty country, but I'm not sure. So again, just type in list of E-treaty countries, and right there, you're already looking more sophisticated. So, okay. So how do you know if the business qualifies for an E2? So I just list for you here a bunch of things that we're going to get into a little bit more. The price has to be right. I get this question all the time from brokers. What is the price? The price is $150,000 roughly. I've been doing this about 20 years. I originally did E2s for $50,000, $75,000, but now we like to get it closer to $150,000. You need 2 full-time employees. So if you have 1 full-time and a bunch of part-time, it really depends on the country that you're filing with. I work with a lot of Canadians, and I don't know what it is about Canadians, but they can be all part-time. I've done cases where all of them were part-time. So I know that you may hear, E2, it must be 2 full-time W-2 workers. There is some flexibility. So it just really depends. Like brokers will call me up and they'll say, here's the situation, this is the deal, and do you think this is gonna work? And I say, let me look at all the figures, let me look at the prices, let me see the workers, and then we figure it out. It just depends on, I have to look at the whole thing. So whether it's active, so marginality issue 2 full-time workers, and whether it's active, not passive business. So you buy a house, you flip it, you buy a house, you flip it. That's not an E2. It has to be an active business. So on the other hand, I don't like to say no. When someone comes to me and they say, well, why is this not a real, US company? I say, look, if you have, let's say, an apartment complex, like where 2 or 3 people are living in, and then you buy another one, and another one, then I say, you know what, that's looking like a business. So maybe you can't flip houses, but let's try to turn this into that there is a way that it could be a business if it involves real estate. Or I've had other situations where you can get very creative with these, but I try not to say no is the point. I try not to say no when you come to me with a deal. I try to say, let's see how we can make this work as an E2. I had a lady once, there were people living in different apartments, and she decided, you know what, I'm gonna buy all those apartments, I'm gonna set up a financial situation that they will pay me back, I'm gonna be like the broker to them, and lend them the money in different ways, and I'm gonna fix them up and renovate them, and she created a whole business, and in the end, the houses or the apartments went back to them, and that was her E2. So you can get very creative with this. So I wouldn't just say no to anything with real estate. The fund's invested from a legal source. So I had a gentleman from the Philippines, and he said to me, well, I've got all this money, but I transferred it to a Swiss bank account. And I said, well, did you pay taxes for it? And he was like, no, I didn't, because I transferred it to the Swiss bank account. And I said, well, that's not going to work for an E2. It has to come from a legal source, and you need to pay taxes on it. So it's very important. You must be seeking to develop your U.S. business on a regular basis. So you don't have to sit there 9 to 5. They joke around that the E-visa is like the retirement visa because so many people use it to come in and stay. First they're snowbirds, then they stay a little longer, and they're like, I really want to stay, but how? So the E2, they just buy a business, buy a small business, which is great business for you guys because this is snowbird, area here in Florida. Also, foreign investor must own 50%. So sometimes you hear 51%, 50% is enough. They just need to own 50%. And the business must have the potential to make a profit in the future. So or the near future. So here there's a recent memo that came out, I'm not gonna read it to you, but it said that, let's say you have a business where it's not profitable. Now, what if it's gonna be profitable in 6 months, 1 year, etc.? So they're saying, because they just changed this memo, show us how it's gonna be profitable in 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, etc. And we'll consider it. We're not gonna say no. It used to be, if we don't see how it's profitable now, and very soon after you enter the United States, we don't like it. So this is something new, and I know attorneys that have tried this. It's very new, and it's worked. I mean, one attorney told me it was making $10,000 a year. It was not really profitable, but it had the potential to be very profitable, and it worked. So, and it depends on the consulate, it depends on the officer. There's a lot of factors. If they like your case or they don't like your case. So substantial investment, I mentioned already, $150,000 roughly. Now, businesses under $500,000, they like you to invest 75% of the money. Businesses between $500,000 and $3 million, they want you to invest 50%. And then there's more, you can see here, there's a little more information. But the bottom line is, try to invest half the money. That's what they're looking for. And the smaller the business is, the more they want you to invest. So, yeah, I'm happy to take questions. Yes?
I've done so many deals with E2 visas
Yes.
in the last, say, 4 years, where the purchase price was well under $100,000.
Right.
Not anymore. A business plan and a pro forma moving forward.
Right.
If you're saying 150.
I know, because the thing is, it depends on the consulate, it depends on the type of business, it depends on how well the business plan is made. So I say 150, I'm not locked into 150. You could have a deal that's 75,000, 100,000, but there are other expenses that bring it up to closer to 150, like attorney fees, you buy a car, different fixtures, improvements, airfare that the person has to fly in and out. Brings it up.
Plan, we always, in the next 3 years, we're doing capital investment this month.
That's right. So it brings it up. So that's why I said, like, a little hesitantly 150,000. Yes?
Have you been successful in getting an E2 visa where the business actually just has independent contractors?
Yes.
I'm aware of some
Yeah,
immigration attorneys that have succeeded, but the general rule you hear is you need to have employees.
I know. So I've been doing this 20 years, okay? So I've done a lot of E2s. I'm probably working on like 1 or 2 a month. And I would say the one, it was $75,000. This was a number of years ago. It was an ice hockey school, and the instructors were all independent contractors. There was no need for a full-time worker, and it worked. It was Canada, of course.
But
It's not
the
easier.
owner of the business had to be actively involved, I assume, at a minimum.
Yeah, he was running the business. Handling the finances, hiring workers, firing them, etc. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen some scenarios where the owner can spend a great deal of time outside the U.S. and he hires a service company and he has an agreement, and then the service company has independent contractors. Say it's trucking or logistics.
Right.
And I was told that the immigration attorney was successful in getting these.
So things, as you know, we have, President Trump is our leader in this country right now, and things are changing a little bit. That they don't want to see that you're coming in and out as the investor very little, and you're just using it as your ticket to get in really easily. They want to see you coming in a little bit more. If they see the investor not in the country that often, they're going to start questioning, what are you doing here? Why do you have the E-visa? Yeah. Okay, so substantial investment. Let's see, anything else? No, let's go substantial investment. It needs to reflect the total cost of purchasing the business or creating a new one. So I mentioned the closer you get to half the amount, the better. I give you a few examples here. This is what doesn't work. Let's say you have a $200,000 deal and you put down $10,000 deposit refundable, and then the rest of the money is going to be transferred once you get the E2 visa. This is an E2 contingency clause. We're going to talk about this in a little bit. So this does not work because the deposit is so little, $10,000. The commitment is so little. But if you were to put, let's say, $50,000 down, refundable deposit, That's much better. 50,000 down, the remaining 150,000 being held in a neutral escrow account to be released when the E2 visa is approved by the consulate. That's better. And there are a lot of small deals, and they work. And they work this way very nicely. So the denial, no one wants to see this word, deny. But this is marginality issue. And I give you an example here at the bottom. It says a U.S. business has 2 part-time workers. Total gross sales, 100,000. Small business. Salaries of 2 part-time workers, 30,000. Expenses, 75,000. There's no salary for the E2 investor. This is a marginality issue. The salaries have to be reasonable. It's very popular in Florida. A lot of salons are here. I do a lot of E2s with salons. So the workers, what if the salon person's being paid $15,000 a year, and that's full-time? That's not going to work, because they're also looking at how reasonable is that salary. You know, can you live off $15,000 a year? Not really. And also the investor, where's his money? There's nothing for him. So there are nuances to this. I wouldn't say straight out. If they don't see the investor's going to get profit the first year, there are ways to explain it. And there are ways, if the investor happens to be very wealthy, let's say, and he can commit to, he'll say, if I'm necessary, I'll bring more funds in of my own. There are ways to do that too, that you can try to show them that you really, you know, can afford it to take a loss, and eventually you'll make a profit as the owner. Okay, and please ask questions if there are any that come up, unless I'm just answering them all. Okay, no, I'm not. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that you're good with having a contingency of having the E2 visa approved by business?
So you can have an E2 contingency in a contract. So you can go, the case will actually get filed with the consulate, and that'll be the final contingency of the contract, the E2 contingency clause. When the case gets approved, the funds are supposed to be released to close the deal, and then a date should be set for the official closing. And that's how an E2 contingency clause works, yes.
It works?
Yeah.
You know, for one thing, sellers don't like that.
That's right.
At all.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's fair, actually, because
I know.
I try not to go there.
I know.
And I work with a lot of.
I don't push the E2 contingency clause, but I just say sometimes you have a buyer that if he doesn't get one, he's not going to do the deal. So you have to have, you know.
Jessica, what I've built
Yeah.
in, a couple of different ways I've done that,
Mhm.
is I built in a non-refundable deposit.
Yeah.
So let's say the business is selling for $150,000, and we go
Mhm.
in, $150,000 is put in at the closing with the E2 visa.
Yeah.
So we're gonna say that we give them, say, 60 days to get the visa. If they don't get the visa,
They lose the
they
money.
can get back
Mhm.
100,000, the
Yeah.
seller's keeping 50,000 of it.
Yeah.
And minus commission to the broker.
It's a compensation for the time that he has to wait.
And it's on the
Extra
market.
legal
That's right.
expenses. So this helps to go, because as a buyer, the buyer doesn't want to risk it.
And he doesn't want to give up any money. Like, he doesn't even want to give up that deposit, but
What
he'll
I-
do it if it holds it
I've
up.
done twice this year is that we've closed with a lease back. I'm in it right now, 2 different deals. We've
Mhm.
leased it back, and the seller is running it for 90 days while they're getting their visa.
Yeah.
And at the end of 90 days, if that person doesn't have the visa, you can own the business, you just can't run it. And they own
Interesting.
a business that they don't have, the
So I
sellers
think-
wouldn't
Sure.
own the visa.
Yes.
I came over on an E2 visa,
Oh, great. We have an example right here.
and I bought my business. So what I did is I came
Yeah.
over on a B1,
Yeah,
B1,
business.
B2.
Mm-hmm.
I bought the business. At the time, the E2 visa in the UK was taking about 3 months to get. So I did
Typical.
I came over on a B2, which is easy to get.
Mm-hmm.
I then did a status change.
Change of
onto
status.
E2
Mm-hmm.
status, took over the business.
Did you go back and get your E2
Started
visa?
running the business.
Yeah.
And supposedly 3 months later, I was then going to go back to the UK, pick up my
Your
E2
visa. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As it turned out, it was only about 2 weeks later.
That's good.
A
Wow.
brand new business that I hadn't yet taken over, I now had to leave and go back to the UK and pick up my visa.
I guess
So
you resided in the
So you
UK.
can do that status change really
Okay.
quickly.
Yeah.
Your status change can come through within 2 weeks of application.
Yeah, you can do an expedite.
I
You get in
expedited
15
it, it came
days.
through within 2 weeks of application, and I was up
Mhm.
and running with the
But-
business,
but-
and then did the visa later on.
But you took the risk.
The only
Yeah.
downside of that was
Sure.
when I went to the UK and then the immigration's computer system went down, I was stuck in the UK.
Just remember that when you do a change of status in the United States, they're hard on them. Filing in the U.S., a lot of us don't want to file in the U.S. because they really scrutinize them. When you have an interview in front of an officer, you get a chance to present your case. If they don't like something, you get a chance to discuss it with them a little bit. So, but sometimes that's the only, for some people, they don't want to travel back, and that's the way they do it. So it is an option.
And it depends, I mean, if
Mhm.
if the deal, the deal that I was working on was not
Mhm.
anywhere near margin, it was a clear case
Right,
of
clear case, so it's
a
good
high-
case.
high investment,
Yep.
good returning business, a number of employees,
Mhm.
it was very unlikely.
So what are you doing here then?
And they married an American who got a green card.
That's the best way.
A way to
Wait,
convert
at
that
the end, I was
into.
gonna throw that in. Okay, let's
Sorry?
see.
A B1, two.
B1, B2.
And it's,
No
what
headache.
that gives you is like on an S that you get 3 months.
Right,
And
90
on a
day.
B1, B2 you get 6 months. But a B1, B2 is designed for if you were coming here and, for example, going to do exhibitions and things like that, but you're not actually earning in the country.
Yeah, a B1 is for business, right, and a B2 is for
It's
tourists.
You're not allowed to actually earn money in
Mhm.
the States.
So just keep in mind that the W-2 full-time worker is the most ideal worker for an E2. There's a hierarchy, so that's the top, and then you have the independent contractors, and what I usually do for an E2 is we have a beautiful staff chart, and we list every single person involved in that business, whether they're part-time, whether they're full-time, because of this lovely policy called Buy American, Hire American Executive Order, April 2016. So we show that this foreign investor is putting capital into this country and also creating all these wonderful jobs for a lot of them American workers. So that's what they want, and I throw that into the application every time. So what types of businesses work for E2s? Well, we discussed a little bit earlier, active versus passive. Restaurants are great, right, Ken? Restaurants are great for E2s. And hotels, franchises, medical offices. What doesn't qualify, we already discussed, you don't want to flip houses and call that a business. And the funds have to come from a legal source. So I had a gentleman from Pakistan once, I think it depends on the country. He was from Pakistan, and they wanted the funds traced right from the origin. They wanted to see the paychecks and the bonuses go into his bank account, from the bank account to the bank account of the US, and from there to buy the business. They don't always do that, but maybe because he was from Pakistan, I think, that they were much more concerned, where's this money coming from? So you have to be ready to do that. I also had a story I'm very proud of, actually. It was a Canadian company, and it was a $1.5 million deal, and it was a very unusual situation where the owner had several companies in Canada, transferred money to another company in Canada they owned, then another one, then to their US company, then they changed the name, and so I had to trace the funds from every entity, just keep going. When he went to the interview with the US consul in Canada, the officer's like, if you wouldn't mind, we'd like to take this case and use this as an example to educate our staff of how funds can be traced. It doesn't matter how many things it goes through, as long as the owner is the same owner that is the E2 investor, it could work. So it was really something, it was very complex, but it worked. So this is an important one, this is funds. Funds must be subject to total or partial loss. They must be actively invested. There are many ways to do these deals. One of them is a seller carryback note, where the seller lends funds to the buyer to purchase the business, with a payment plan in place to return funds owed. So whether whatever loan situation there is for an E2, if it's secured by the business you're buying or not, it depends on the size of the business you're buying. It's very hard to secure it with the US company you're buying. If it's like a $200,000 deal and you're only putting $100,000 in, they don't love those. On the other hand, if it's like $1 million deal and $500,000 you're putting down, the rest is a loan, that could work. So it really just depends. The promissory notes are allowed too, and it really depends on the size of the deal. That's the main point of that slide. E2 investor needs to be seeking to enter the US in order to oversee the business. So as I said before, snowbirds love E2s. They love them. I had a gentleman that was from Canada. He owned a gas station in Arizona where one of our offices are, and basically he said, I have a specialty. I clean these cars beautifully when they come down, the snowbirds. I have special treatment for them. I know just what it takes. And so this was his thing for his E2. It wasn't just a gas station, it was a special gas station that cleaned Canadian snowbird cars. And he was in his 70s, and he's like, you think I'll get this visa? He's like, because I'm in my 70s. I'm like, it really doesn't matter. There's no age restriction. Could get it even older than 70. So, and it worked. And also, one spouse will be, in the end, if they want to work, they'll get a work permit. They'll have the ability for employment authorization. So we have to decide who is the investor and who's the spouse that's going to go work for anyone they want. And that's tricky sometimes. Yeah?
Just one question, the
Sure.
spouse, if the spouse doesn't have the same nationality or is not from a country of E
Right.
treaty, can can she still be?
Yes, good question.
dependent?
Yeah, they still get it, but they'll go to the interview with the spouse that does have it at that consulate. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they'll get it. Okay, moving along, potential foreign buyers. So the foreign buyer has to own 50%. What does that mean? So you could have, let's say you have 4 different people from, I'll use Canada because I work with a lot of Canadians, 4 different people from Canada that own 50% of a U.S. company. The other 50% owned by a U.S. citizen. That's okay. You can have that. But then what's happening? You're not bringing in the E2 investor because he would have to own 50% by himself. You could bring in qualifying workers. So I just mentioned here that the qualifying workers, actually, let's see, maybe that's on the next one. Qualifying employees here. Qualifying employees are managers, executives, and people with specialized knowledge or skill. So these are people that can come in if the company qualifies under the E requirements. And I've done many of these. As an example, I'll give you a company that's a water conservation company in Canada. They wanted to open up a branch in the United States. They want to bring down a manager. They need to be supervising workers. It's very hard to get these approved when you don't supervise anyone. Because then they're like, what are you doing here? You're just coming in, you claim you're a manager, but what are you doing? So yeah, you can manage key functions, but it's much easier if you manage workers. Whether you speak a foreign language, that's not as critical. They're really looking to see, do you have the experience? So I want you to keep this in mind because sometimes you have a buyer that says, oh, I'm just buying a U.S. business because I want to bring my nephew in, or I want to bring, another family member in or whatever, or a worker. They can do that. There is a way for them to do that. How do you show that the company can make a profit now or over 5 years? It's all about documentation. What documents do you need? You have to set up a legal entity. It's got to be a legal entity or a sole proprietorship. This is where a corporate lawyer gets involved. You have to get a tax ID number, open a U.S. business account with a tax ID number, and the funds should be transferred to buy the business from the investor's personal account. So I get this question a lot. Can it be the account in the foreign country directly to the seller? Yes. It could also be the buyer has an account in the United States and they're transferring the money from that account to the seller. So it could be either. In the end, it's better to purchase the business in the legal company name. So sometimes the offer will be in the name of the individual, but when we actually do the contract to purchase the business, you want it in the legal entity name. Additional documentation. So how does this all work? There's so many documents. What happens is we are a team. So it's the broker, it's the immigration attorney, and it's the buyer. We're all a team trying to get this job done. Everybody has different motivations, as the gentleman mentioned up there, that, contingency clause, the broker's not so excited about. The immigration attorney wants to get the job done. They want to get all the paperwork in, case should be successful. The buyer wants to get into America, but he just wants to do it, the way he wants to do it. And the broker wants to get paid. They want to get the deal done. So we all try to factor everything in, and my job is, I'm the paper shrinker. What that means is basically when we file these cases at the consulate, I have to get the papers down to 70 pages. But my clients will give me like this much. So I got to shrink it and just keep shrinking it until I get it to the 70 pages that I submit usually electronically. So I list for you here some of the things I put in the cases, like closing documents, or if it's an active contract, the contingency clause will be in the document. The last 2 years of tax returns they like. A really good business plan where you show the next 6 months, 1, 3, and 5 years, what this company is going to be doing, their gross income, who they're going to hire, what kind of activities they'll be doing. 2 years of payroll they want to see, so if it's a new company, you're not going to have that. So that's why the business plan becomes critical. Also, this is an interesting one. If you have an E2 contingency clause, you need to keep in mind, you may not own the business, but there are certain licenses that you can have. State, federal, county, etc. You need all your licenses. If you just think you incorporate, and that's it, you're a legal entity, if there's a way to get any licenses where you're going to set up shop, you should try to get them. I've seen cases where this is a problem. You don't have all your licenses in place. And then you want to argue, well, you don't own the business yet. Why do you need all the licenses? But you need to make sure you get everything you do need before you file. So proof of an active business, you need invoices, utility bills, photos of the business. There are things we can't get. Brokers try, I'll answer 1 second. We try to get everything we can get. But for example, I had a company, was an elder care home, and she said, I can't release names of my clients for HIPAA laws. I can't tell you all of them. And I said, you can't. We can't produce what we can't get. We do the best we can to get everything, we need. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question because in the documents you
Yes.
don't mention a lease. because there's always a question between the brick and mortar business and internet business. Do you do internet? Have you seen internet business going through E2?
Interesting that you said that. I have worked more on E1 with internet businesses because they're all over the world. So they're coming in and they're opening up a branch in the United States. But whatever, you said something about a lease also.
Yeah, because most of the cases for the
There's-
E2s, they like to have a
That's right.
place and a rent and to see
Mhm.
a signed lease.
That's right. So I also said, because I've been doing this a number of years, I've seen a lot of situations. So I had a client once that, got junk, that company maybe.
Yes.
So they had lots of trucks and they parked them all in their driveway and they took a section of their house and that was their office space. And we showed that they really dedicated that section for their business and it worked for an E2. But you really need a designated section. If it's an internet business, they're gonna say you just hop on your computer, hop off of it. Like, how do we know you're really, where's your operation? So it's always better to have a place. Sometimes I'll tell them, just get executive suite or something, virtual office, like anything. Yeah, something to put your name on, something. Yeah. So moving along. So transferring funds, it's very important. Where did these funds come from and where are they going? You must show the process. Every bank statement, wire transfer, if the funds are coming from a gift, show proof that you got the gift. If they're assets coming from another country being transferred in, we show proof of that too. Really simple. I had a client that had a car renovation business and all the equipment to develop the cars. He said, I'm bringing all that equipment down. I said, show me the value of it, show me you paid for it, and that was part of his investment. But just don't transfer funds to a bank account and say it's an active business. That does not work. And years ago, someone came into my office and said, I thought that was an E2. That's not an active business. E2 contingency clause, very popular. E2 contingency clause. You like it, you don't like it, but it's out there. And the consulates accept it. And basically what it is, for those of you who don't know, is the foreign buyer sometimes wants to not own the U.S. business until the E2 is approved by the consulate. So this is the magical word here. It says, little phrase here, remaining funds owed to complete the deal will be released automatically from the neutral escrow account where they're being held upon approval of the E2 visa by the U.S. consulate abroad, or if it's done in the United States at USCIS. And I mentioned to you earlier an example of it, that once the deal closes, then the funds are released. And how does it work after that? So you may wonder, what happens after that? So yes, now you have your visa and your passport, 3 to 5 days you wait, you pick it up typically at the consulate. Now you come into America with it, that activates it, and now you can go to your closing. So that's what happens after the E2 visa is issued. Okay, yes,
Question,
sure.
legal question. What happens before the E2 visa is given?
Mm-hmm.
Who is the owner of the business? Is it still the seller or already the buyer? What happens if there's a fire and everything disappears? Who's responsible?
Well, if there's an E2 contingency clause, you don't own the business yet. So the original owner is responsible. And if it's closed, the deal's closed, it's closed. Then you're the owner of the business waiting for your E2 to get approved. So, is that making sense?
So, I mean, the way I do it,
Yeah.
way I do it is usually I have
Mm-hmm.
almost, I would say, two closing. One closing where all the money is put into escrow, but in the clause that I write, or the lawyer write, I put it in writing that the seller is still the owner of the business until he gets all his money, which is at the second closing when the buyer gets his visa.
It sounds like a contingency clause. You're just writing it differently.
Yeah, but then it means that the seller,
You didn't use my words.
the seller remains the owner and the manager of his business until he gets all the money. Until there's really
I think it's okay to do it that way. I hear what you're saying. I think. Yes.
Can we get a copy of that?
Yeah, I don't know. You'll send it out to them? Okay.
Send a
That's
follow-up
it.
with all the.
So what if you want to start a business from scratch? You have people that come in, they say, I don't want any of the businesses you're showing me, nothing looks too exciting. You can do that, but I tell you, wait a few months. Get the doors open to the business. Get customers, get payroll. Need a strong business plan. But where you come into the picture is maybe they'll buy a franchise, or maybe they need office space. So that's where you come in, and it can work, but it doesn't work. Years ago it worked that they didn't have to even have the doors open. Now I like the doors open to the business a little bit.
Jessica,
Yes,
what happens if you want to open a restaurant, a big restaurant,
right.
or a big franchise,
Right.
and you need to build out the restaurant and equip it, and
Mm-hmm.
when the investor can apply for a visa. So it can take time, so it's 10
I know.
12 months. So, and then it take time to get customers, and then, so what is your
So
recommendation?
it depends on the country,
Uh-huh.
okay? And it also depends on, like, if you have to go for training, sometimes when it's a franchise, you have to go for training.
Mhm.
So they'll come in on a B1, business visitor,
Uh-huh.
and get the training done, but I really like the doors open, even if it's not that profitable. We use a history, since if, let's say if it's a franchise, there's a whole history of success of other franchises.
Okay,
So we'll use that, even though it won't be that active,
okay.
what I'm saying. How long can you stay on an e-visa? So we went over this before, so I'm not going to emphasize it, that sometimes it's a 5-year visa, sometimes it's less, but when you enter the country, you get 2-year status, and when 6 months before the visa is going to expire, you want to renew it. So renewal can be done usually at the consulate from where it was originally issued. There are a few exceptions. What if my client comes to the U.S. on a visa waiver? As the gentleman mentioned up there, ESTA, 90 days, there's no visa, that's why it says visa waiver, there's no visa, no sticker in the passport. You can't change to an E2. But if you come in on a B1, B2, you can. But again, it's not so easy, but unless you have like a solid case, then it could be easier. Okay, so they always ask when they come in on an E2, I want a social security number, I want a driver's license, you're gonna get all of that. But you have to enter. Enter, activate your E2, then you're going to get your driver's license, you'll apply for social security number, go to the local social security office, and then go get your driver's license. And your wife will get it as well once, or this, whoever is the investor, the spouse will get it, but the children won't. So, and they're usually 1-year work permits. And the thing is, the work permits don't come so soon. Now, when you enter U.S., you apply for the work permit. It used to be 90 days on the dot, you get your work permit. Now, it's taking at least 4 or 5 months. So right when they come in, I tell them, the spouse that wants a work permit, file for it. So what are the advantages of the E2? Well, I love the E2. So the advantages are ability to travel freely, work legally in the U.S. for the E2 company, remain in the U.S. for a prolonged period of time. You could stay in E2 forever. You don't have to come out of E2 as long as you qualify. And you just keep renewing it as long as you qualify. Dependents can accompany you if they're under 21. And when they hit 21, then they have to file something else, like an F1 student visa or something. The disadvantages to the E are it's limited to specific treaty countries. You must work for the E2 business. It's approved in 2-year status increments. And the E2 beneficiary must always have the intent to be in the U.S. temporarily. So substantive changes of an E company, I'm not going to get into this too much, you can read it, but just that if there's a major change in the E2, they need to file a new one. Major change, like if they don't own 50% of the company anymore, or if they actually sell the company. Because I had a client once that owned a salon, he was an E2, and he sold it to another person that wanted an E2. And I said, well, you're going to have to get your own E2. You can't just rely on that person's E2. So that's a major change. And let's see, don't forget about the E1. Oh, yeah, sure.
What biggest advantages is the E2, as far as I know, it doesn't take you directly to green card.
Oh, you're going 2 slides ahead of me. I'm coming there. 2 slides and I'm going to answer that. Okay. So I just want to mention the E1 very... Oh, do you have a question too?
Yeah, so pertaining to family, let's say the E2 gets approved.
Okay.
They have to have work permits for anybody over 21? And is there a max on how many family members you can bring over?
Well, no, the spouse gets the work permit. Once you're over 21, the children over 21, then they're going to have to get a different visa, like they'll be a student or something else, or they'll marry you a citizen. Keep that in mind.
So
That's
the
always
only
the
person that
fallback on
has
that.
to come in is the spouse?
Spouse and children come in, the children under 21. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the,
Mhm.
when you said about the disadvantages, that is actually the number one disadvantage to E2.
Yeah.
I mean, they come in knowing that that's the rules. They bring young children with them who are, to all intents and purposes, now American, don't even remember the home
Yes.
country.
Yeah.
21 years old, they then have to go exactly.
We're getting them green cards. I'm really trying to get them green cards. And they're green again, just so you know, because the green cards weren't green. Call them green cards. They started green, went green, pink, and now they're back to green. So sometimes you have a buyer that owns a business abroad, and a majority of their worldwide trade or services is between the U.S. and their country. So keep that in mind. If someone says, I have a business abroad, I say, what kind of business? And let's hear a little bit about it. And if so, they might qualify for what's called an E1. Stop. Yes. So E1 is substantial trade or services with the U.S., open a U.S. entity, and must have an E1 treaty. Why is this so wonderful? Because you don't need substantial investment, you don't need employees, you don't need office space, you don't even need a degree. So what do you need? You just need trade, substantial trade. So simple, short little example. Let's see, maybe it's the battery. Okay. So what do you need? Well, let me give you an example. 1 second. Yellow School Bus Company in Canada. All the buses were made in America, and they were all being sold in Canada. The gentleman said, you know what, I want to start selling in the United States. So I said, great, open up an office, and that's it. We showed substantial trade. It was trade, majority of his trade was between the US and Canada, and that was it. That was an E1. Sorry. Substantial, right.
Yeah.
There's no exact figure again, where substantial is vague, but I say there's a difference between when gross sales are 100,000 with the US and they're 500,000. I say 500,000 is more substantial than 100,000. Did you have a question?
That was the question.
Okay, sure. So I'm going to do the slides. I'm going to pretend they're up there. Let's see. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. So how can I turn an EV into a green card? So I'm not going to get into too much on the EB5s, because she's going to talk about it shortly. But I just list for you here the criteria. And you can read it in the PowerPoint. What I want to get to is the next slide. What are your other options? So if EB5, where you invest, $500,000 or $1 million in a new commercial enterprise with a few exceptions to that, and create 10 full-time jobs, again with a few exceptions to that, what else can you do? Sometimes your foreign buyers don't have that kind of money. So I either put them into EB1, which is extraordinary ability, if they have national or international recognition as a business developer in their country. Because these are all entrepreneurs. E2, a lot of them are entrepreneurs. So if I can't get them into EB1, very popular, what I do is EB3. EB3 are skilled workers. And this is an important slide for you because you will get people calling up saying, I just want a green card. Buying a business, want a green card. And if they don't qualify for an EB5, what do they qualify for? You don't want to discourage them completely. They're not going to come here. So you say, maybe let's see what you're buying, how much it is. EB3 requires 2 years of full-time work experience, and you need to be hired by a U.S. employer. So the entrepreneur, E2, doesn't always want to be hired by somebody else, but they'll do it because they're desperate. I have people in E2 15 years or more, and they're like, I'm just going to do it. I'm so tired of renewing the E2 visa. And it is a process. It can take like 1.5 years, and that's a whole nother discussion of how it works. But just, it's good for you to know that on my website at attorneyjessicaweiss.com, I have all these really helpful charts. And this is one of them, where it shows how do you take an E2 and turn them into an EB1, 2, 3, or 5. And there's many other charts on there too that you can access. One's just straight E2, and there's a bunch of them. So it's helpful to, you can even show it to your potential clients when they come in. So what is this slide? This is Form I-508. The E2 people do not like this one. This is basically, we have a lovely treaty with people that want E, but we give them certain benefits, and there are some tax benefits for them. And I'm not the tax expert, but whenever they want to file for a green card, they're going to have to complete this form. And this form may require them to pay back taxes. So it's important. You may want to take a peek at it online and take a look at the form. And just give you a quick little example. I had a gentleman that invested $10 million in different venture capitalist things. He had lots of workers. He was even married to a U.S. citizen. And he said, okay, I'm ready for a green card. Started looking at the situation. He had an E2. And he said, you know what? I'm going to owe so many taxes. Forget it. He's like, I'm just going to stay in E2 forever. And that's it. He's just staying in E2. And the last just couple quick slides. Interesting facts about the E2 visa is Canadians are getting 2,854 of them out of the 43,000. Mexicans are getting a lot of them, and the approval rate is 93% according to the U.S. State Department. In 2017, it's a very high approval rate. And if you see some of the most popular states that they're coming to, Florida's on there. So you guys should be in a good position here. And the other thing I'll just mention is that I've been doing E2 visas, as I said, for 20 years. I've never seen a lack of them. There's always been E2 work. I can see that sometimes the managerial E2s could be problematic, but not the E2 investor. The next slide also you can read when you get a chance, and it's just different countries, the E's and stuff. And today's focus for me was on the E's, but I do many different areas of the business world. Religious visas, as she mentioned, athletes and coaches and managers and all sorts of people coming into the U.S. I do lots of different ones. And we have 3 different office locations, and we're developing our Boca office, in the last couple of years. Yeah.
If we have a buyer who comes to us and they're looking for an E2, what should they expect to spend on their legal fees?
Sure, great question. So usually I charge between $7,500 and $8,500 for the main investor. Then each family member, it's between $500 and $700 for the family members, and the filing fee is $205. So I do flex a little bit with the price because it just depends, if I've been working with a broker a lot and they, say, can you please relax the price a little bit, but it also depends on the complexity of the E2. And that one that I told you about that was like transferring funds from one company to the next and the next, it got very complex. So it depends on the deal too. But that was a good question. Yeah.
Do you prepare the business plan if necessary, or do you outsource that?
Okay, so as you probably know, there's a lot of companies that do business plans and they can charge thousands and thousands of dollars for them. So I give my client a choice. I say, here's my sample one. You're welcome to use it and fill in the information and I'll look it over. Or you're welcome to call their company. So I offer both. I do both. Either they use mine or they can go professional.
And the business plan is included in the price?
Yes, it is. There are a lot of sample documents that I give them, like a sample staff chart, net income statement. There's a lot of, yeah, sure.
To market myself, I do business plans for E2 visa.
Okay, see, there are people that do it.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
need
it's an
be-
option. Yeah, okay. So I think that's it, and I'm happy to add you, sorry, yeah.
Your opening slide was a scenario where you had a treaty country and a non-treaty, so how
Yes.
can the non-treaty come in on the coattails of the, at 50% owner?
Can you just repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Your opening slide had a
Yes, I know.
scenario, two buyers
Yes.
come in for an E2 together, one was from a treaty country, one wasn't.
Yeah.
How does the one that isn't from a treaty country come in like that as a partner?
Right, so they're not going to come in because they don't come from a treaty country unless they're married. So, or they're a U.S. citizen. So I was showing that you could have a U.S. citizen owning 150,000 of the business, and the other 150 coming from someone that is a treaty country. But you're right, they're not going to come in if they don't have a treaty country. We're going to have to come up with another way to get them in, maybe an L1A. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how. But and you're all welcome to call me if you have questions, down the road. But thank you again so much for letting me speak. Thank you.